What happens when you uncover the shocking reality behind some of your favorite foods? From horrifying production practices to hidden ingredients, stay tuned as I uncover the gruesome truth about what's really on your plate. Let's dive in. 1. Parmesan cheese. You think that shaker of Parmesan on your table is the real deal? Think again. In 2016, Bloomberg dropped a bombshell. Big names like Walmart's Great Value and Kraft were sprinkling a bit of the forest into their cheese with something called cellulose. Yes, wood pulp, folks. It's there to stop clumps. But hey, isn't it supposed to be all cheese? And it gets cheesier. The FDA took a peek into Castle Cheese Inc. And guess what? Their Parmesan sold at places like Target had zero, zilch, nada, real Parmesan. What was in there? A wild mix of Swiss, mozzarella, white cheddar, and good old cellulose. The big cheese at Castle even got slapped with probation for 3 years because of this stunt. Want real Parmesan? Ditch the shakers, grab a whole block with the Parmigiano Reggiano seal from the Cheese Consortium. It's legit. Strict rules, special seals, and all. That's how you get the good stuff without the tricks. 2. Sliced bread. You know how they say something revolutionary is the best thing since sliced bread? Well, here's a twist that might not sit so well. Ever noticed how that store-bought bread manages to stay fresh for ages without a speck of mold? Thanks to Vice, we've got the scoop, and it's a bit hairy. So here's the deal. That long-lasting loaf might owe its shelf life to L-cysteine, an ingredient that's natural, sure, but here's the kicker. It's mostly made from human hair. Yep. The next time someone brags about all-natural ingredients, you might want to ask them how they feel about having a bit of hair salon leftovers in their PB&J. This stuff is collected, dissolved in acid, and voila, it ends up in your bread. 3. Beer. Beer, the golden nectar we all love, has a quirky little secret that might just make some of you hop off your bar stools. Ever heard of isinglass? It's this gel-like stuff made from fish bladders, and guess what? It's been swimming in your beer since the 1800s to make it look all clear and pretty. Yeah, fish bladders. Not everyone cheered for this fishy business, especially the vegetarians and the no fishy stuff in my brew crowd. Enter the modern heroes like Tim Bosworth from Twisted Barrel Brewery. Kicking it off in 2014, Tim, a staunch veggie-gone vegan, shook up the brewing scene. He was all about ditching the old-school fish bladder finesse, calling it out with, "Nobody really wants to advertise that they filter their beer through a dead fish." Now, that's a movement catching on, brewing up a storm with clearer, kinder beers that let you drink without the fishy extras. 4. Synthetic food dyes. There's this whole spiel with synthetic food dyes. You know those things that make your candies and drinks pop with eye-catching colors? Turns out, they're not just made from fairy dust. Nope, they're whipped up from petroleum products, yeah, the same stuff that fuels cars. Get this. Yellow 5 and Yellow 6, those vibrant hues in your favorite snacks, are concocted from compounds that might just be playing a villainous role, hinting at cancer risks. Creepy, right? These dyes are like little chaos agents for kids, potentially cranking up hyperactivity and messing with learning. Imagine sipping on a drink that turns your calm into a whirlwind. Plus, if you're sensitive, these dyes might have you breaking out in rashes or gasping for breath. Not fun. Oh, and the cherry on top? Producing these synthetic nightmares is a horror show for the planet too, with all sorts of nasty chemicals leaking into the environment. 5. Instant noodles. Did you know that those instant noodles you've been slurping since 1958 come with a bit more than just easy prep and yummy taste? Yep, here's the deal. Those quick noodles are kneaded from wheat flour, salt, water, and sometimes a dash of alkaline water. They're steamed, sliced into thin strips, and usually fried to give you that classic crunchy bite. But hold up, this frying bit, not so great. The frying not only pumps up the fat by using palm oil, yikes, deforestation alert, but it also cooks up acrylamide, something you really don't want in your snack since it's a possible cancer trigger. And let's not skip the preservatives, which are no friends of health either. Non-fried noodles could have been the heroes, except they kind of flop on texture and don't cozy up with water as well. Although air-dried versions cut down on the fat, they haven't quite caught the limelight. 6. Truffle oil. Truffles are like the sparkling diamonds of the culinary universe, super rare and ultra-luxurious. But a lot of what's sold as truffle oil is more faux than fancy. Yep, Many bottles of so-called truffle oil are just packed with synthetic stuff like 2,4-dithiapentane. That's a chemical that dupes your nose into thinking you've hit gourmet gold, even though it's all a sham. Now, growing real truffles? Talk about a challenge. They're these elusive gems hiding underground, cozying up to tree roots, playing a sneaky game of nutrient swap. You can't just dig them up. You need the nose of a specially trained dog or pig to hunt them down. And patience? You'll need loads, because these babies take years to mature. With their hefty price tag and the air of mystery around their cultivation, truffles stir up a mix of high stakes and high scams. People have shelled out crazy cash for these. Think $120,000 for just £2. 7. Coffee. In a rather unsettling forecast, some experts are predicting that by 2080, 70% of the world's coffee supply might just vanish. Yeah, that's a jolt not from caffeine, but from the looming threat of climate change. For those of us who rely on a cup or 3 to kickstart our day, this is no small beans. And hold up, there's more to this brouhaha. Ever wondered if that coffee you're guzzling down is the real deal? Turns out your 100% pure ground coffee might just be a blend of wheat, soy, or even sticks and stones, figuratively speaking. This is not just a bitter cup for taste buds, but a serious alert for anyone with allergies. To combat these coffee cons, scientists have been on their toes. From Brazilian researchers whipping out liquid chromatography in 2014 to Italian coffee detectives in 2016 and Kona coffee farmers scoring a legal win in 2021 to protect their precious beans, the fight against fake coffee is on. 8. Foie gras. Foie gras is made by force-feeding ducks or geese. Yep, they use a tube to stuff these birds with loads of corn, multiple times a day. This isn't your usual feeding frenzy. It balloons their livers up to 10 times the normal size, turning it into a fatty, sick organ. These birds are cooped up in tiny cages and hardly able to move, which just piles on more stress and injury. Not so glamorous now, huh? And get this, the high fat in foie gras could be a ticket to Heart Disease City, with a side trip to other nasty conditions thanks to something called amyloids in there. Animal lovers are up in arms, calling out the cruelty of this gourmet horror show, pointing to the severe harm it causes the birds. Several countries, including the UK, Israel, and India, have banned its production, while some places like California and New York City are trying to shut down this dark delicacy. The foie gras saga is far from over. 9. Chewing gum. Chewing gum, you either love it or you can't stand it, right? But here's the stretchy truth. The gum base, which gives it that oh-so-chewy texture, is a bit of a mystery box. Turns out, manufacturers aren't exactly spilling the beans on what goes into this gum base. And guess what's potentially in there? Something called lanolin. Now, lanolin is this waxy stuff that sheep naturally produce to keep their wool waterproof. Sounds harmless? Hold up. When sheep are sheared, this lanolin is spun out of the wool and finds its way into all sorts of products from lotions to, yep, your chewing gum. Though it's generally safe, chomping down on too much lanolin can actually be toxic. And if you're someone who gets itchy just thinking about wool sweaters, you might react to it too. 10. Chicken nuggets. Ever wonder what's really in those chicken nuggets you love? Broiler chickens are pumped to grow so fast, they end up with all kinds of painful issues, cramped up in less than stellar conditions. Once they're big enough, it's off to the house where they meet their end. The aftermath? Their meat gets ground up into a paste. Yep, bones and all, mixed with things like chicken skin, starch, and a dash of sodium phosphate to jazz it up. They shape this mix into those bite-sized nuggets, bread them, fry them, and then freeze them up for your dining pleasure. These nuggets pack a punch with fat, sodium, and calories, but skimp on the nutrition. They're linked to some serious health scares like heart disease and even colorectal cancer due to all those additives and the frying game. 11. Lobster. Let's say you're celebrating a big occasion, maybe an anniversary, and you decide to splurge on what you think is a fancy lobster dish. Well, hold up. There's a chance that lobster might be a phony. Barton Seaver from Harvard's Healthy and Sustainable Food Programs points out a sneaky issue. Tons of lobster species out there, and most folks haven't got a clue. An Inside Edition probe found that a whopping 35% of lobster served in 28 restaurants wasn't the real deal. What you might be getting instead could be a mix of Alaskan pollock, whiting, or haddock, all mashed up to mimic lobster. And hey, while some might think langostino is just another fake, Bob Baer at the Lobster Institute says that's not quite right. It's legit, just not what you expect. Next time you're ordering, keep it simple to avoid the fakes. If it's got claws, you're probably good. But if you're diving into soups, raviolis, or salads, watch out. You might be getting duped. 12. Worcestershire sauce. Back in the 19th century, two chemists, John Lear and William Perrins, whipped up the first batch of this tangy concoction in Worcester, England. They tossed in everything but the kitchen sink: vinegar, molasses, sugar, salt, anchovies, yes, fish in your sauce, tamarind, onions, garlic, and a secret blend of spices. They let this wild mix ferment for 2 years, giving it a stir now and then to get that umami flavor that's got everyone talking. While it's all fun and flavors, this sauce packs a salty punch. The American version cranks up the sodium, which isn't exactly heart-friendly. 13. Baby carrots. Those baby carrots you love aren't born tiny. They start as regular, sometimes wonky carrots that get chopped, peeled, and sculpted into those snack-sized bites. Dreamt up in the 80s by a clever California farmer named Mike Urasek, this trick was all about cutting down waste from less-than-perfect carrots. Here's the scoop. They shave down these carrots and blast them with a chlorine wash, kinda like the stuff in your tap water, to kill germs and keep them fresh longer. But stripping them down does lose some fiber and nutrients, making them less mighty than their full-sized cousins. And about that chlorine, while it's food safe, it sparks some serious side-eye from the health-conscious crowd, stirring up rumors and worries about what we're really eating. Sure, it's great for reducing waste, but at what cost? 14. Farmed shrimp. Farmed shrimp are typically raised in coastal ponds in Southeast Asia and Central America. The cycle kicks off in hatcheries, ramps up in nursery ponds, and finishes in grow-out ponds, where these shrimps bulk up to market size in a swift 90 days. But it's not all smooth sailing. These ponds are crowded, and the shrimp are pumped with antibiotics and chemicals to keep them alive and kicking, literally. This shrimp farming business, it's gobbling up mangrove forests, which are crucial for sucking carbon out of the air and housing a ton of wildlife. The fallout? A hefty release of carbon dioxide, turbocharging climate change, and a nasty cocktail of waste mucking up local waters. 15. Packaged food snacks. In this startling revelation, what seems like just a quick grab from the snack aisle is actually a whole lot of trouble. You see, those packaged food snacks we all love, turns out they're not only bad for our health, but they're also messing up the planet. They're packed with stuff like refined grains, sugars and oils, all jazzed up with artificial nasties to make them taste good and last forever. Now get this, the high heat during production, it nukes the nutrients right out, leaving behind things like trans fats. Yeah, those are the bad guys that mess with your heart by playing tug-of-war with your cholesterol levels. And don't get me started on the sodium and sugars. Hello, hypertension and diabetes. The packaging might as well be a chemical cocktail with a side of hormone disruption and a sprinkle of cancer risk. Oh, and it loves to stick around, polluting the environment long after you've tossed it. The kicker? Despite all the health scares and recalls, these snacks still parade around, labeled as healthy. 16. Marshmallows. What's the scoop behind those puffy sweet marshmallows? It starts with boiling a mix of sugar, corn syrup, and water into a sticky syrup. Next, gelatin. Yup, that stuff from animal bones and skins gets mixed in. This concoction is then whipped to get that airy, cloud-like texture. Poured into molds and dusted with cornstarch or powdered sugar, these squishy treats are made to keep from clinging to each other. Chomping down on these sugary clouds can send you straight towards health nightmares like obesity, diabetes, and even heart disease. And the gelatin? It's a bit of a horror show for those looking to steer clear of animal products, not to mention it can stir up some real tummy troubles. 17. Artificial sweeteners. Alright, let's flip the switch on and shine some light on this topic. This is for those who use artificial sweeteners, thinking they've outsmarted regular sugar. Those artificial sweeteners like aspartame, saccharin, sucralose, yep, that's Splenda, and Ace K are not just magic diet helpers. They're cooked up in labs through some pretty intense chemistry. Aspartame? That's just aspartic acid, and phenylalanine getting cozy. Saccharin? Born from a reaction that starts with toluene, a stuff they get from petroleum. And sucralose? They basically swap out parts of sugar molecules with chlorine. Yep, chlorine. Now, before you go reaching for another packet, these sweet little lies might be messing with more than just your taste buds. Linked to obesity, mood swings, and even messing with your gut bacteria, these sweeteners are stirring up all sorts of trouble. 18. Ice cream. Perhaps you're indulging in a creamy scoop of your go-to flavor of ice cream while watching this video. But have you asked what's actually in there? It starts off innocently with milk, cream, sugar, and flavors, all mixed and pasteurized to zap those nasty bacteria. Smooth, right? Hold on, it gets whipped up with air while freezing to keep it light and fluffy. But they toss in stabilizers and emulsifiers like gar gum and carrageenan to make sure it doesn't turn into a frosty mess on the shelf. Think that half-cup serving is harmless? Think again. It packs up to 21 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fat. And frequent treats? Hello, obesity, diabetes, and heart troubles. 19. Hot dogs. Ever wonder what goes into those seemingly innocent hot dogs at your BBQ? Well, it's a mashup of various lower-grade meat trimmings. Think pork, beef, and chicken, all ground up with a mix of food starch, salt, and other flavorings. This concoction is then emulsified, shaped into those familiar links, and cooked. To boost the flavor and extend shelf life, they toss in some corn syrup and preservatives. These dogs pack nitrites and nitrates, preservatives that are no friends of your colon, linked to a heightened risk of colorectal cancer. They might keep the hot dogs looking pretty and bacteria-free, but at what cost? And if that's not enough to make you squirm, hot dogs often find themselves on the recall list for being contaminated with delights like listeria, metal shards, and even bone fragments. Sometimes, what's labeled as meat is less than 10% of your hot dog, with fillers and other bizarre extras filling in the gaps. 20. Pre-packaged guacamole. So the scene starts with avocados getting mashed up in huge batches. They toss them into this high-tech pressure cooker called high-pressure processing, HPP, to zap all the germs without cooking them to death. This trick keeps the guac green and extends its stage life. They even throw in stuff like citric acid to stop it from turning brown. Magic, right? To keep the show going, they pump the packaging with nitrogen, kicking out good old oxygen to slow down the spoil fest. Now for the plot twist. Along with the good stuff, they mix in a cocktail of artificial flavors, colors, and stabilizers. Sounds like a recipe for a blockbuster, but maybe not so much for your belly, especially if you're munching on it regularly. Though it tries to steal the spotlight with convenience, this guac can't match the fresh, zesty taste of the stuff you whip up at home. 21. Energy drinks. Do you even have any idea what's in those electric-colored cans of energy drinks that make you feel like you've got turbo thrusters? It's a wild concoction of caffeine, sugars, amino acids like taurine, herbal extracts like guarana and ginseng, and a bunch of vitamins. They start with water, throw in these ingredients, add a splash of high fructose corn syrup or artificial sweeteners for that sugary kick, then carbonate and pasteurize the mix before it hits the shelves. Now here's where it gets a bit hair-raising. These drinks pack a punch with 100 to 300 milligrams of caffeine per can. That's way more than your average coffee or soda. Chugging these can lead to a roller coaster of anxiety, insomnia, and even heart flutters. And don't get me started on the sugar. Hello, obesity, diabetes, and tooth decay. Mixing them with alcohol? Bad news. It's like throwing a party and only inviting trouble. 22. Imitation crab. Meat imitation crab, a seafood masquerader also known as surimi. It's crafted from Alaskan pollock that's been deboned, minced, and mushed up with a concoction of starch, sugar, egg whites, and flavorings. This mix is then heated and shaped to look just like real crab meat, complete with artificial colors to boost its disguise. This extensive processing strips away most of the natural nutrients, leaving you with a product that's low in fat and calories, but missing the good stuff, vitamins and minerals. It's like a nutrition heist, really. And the plot thickens with a sodium level that's off the charts compared to real crab, which could set you up for hypertension and heart issues if you're not careful. Plus, it's loaded with additives that might just stir up trouble for those with food sensitivities. To top it off, the backstory of this fishy faux pas involves environmental and ethical dilemmas, from overfishing issues to questionable labor practices in the seafood industry. 23. Jelly beans. How do jelly beans get made, you ask? It all starts with a sugary slurry. Yep, that's a mix of sugar, corn syrup, and starch. This goo gets heated and slopped into molds to form what eventually becomes the belly of the bean. After drying, they throw on layers of sugar for that tough outer shell and then buff it up to a high sheen with wax. And not just any wax. This stuff comes from bug secretions and sometimes beeswax or carnauba wax. Shiny, right? Before you dive into that colorful pile, know this: jelly beans are basically sugar bombs. Eating too many can skyrocket your blood sugar, maybe even nudging you towards obesity, diabetes, or heart issues. And those pretty colors? Courtesy of artificial dyes that could make the kiddos a little too bouncy. Not to mention, they stick to your teeth like nobody's business, which could mean more trips to the dentist. And for the eco-friendly crowd, well, that shiny coating comes from shellac. Yes, bug juice, which might not jive with the vegetarian or vegan vibe. Plus, those natural flavors on the label? Not so natural after all. 24. Fruit juice. You might want to flick on the kitchen lights before you read the label on that fruit juice bottle. Those vibrant, tempting bottles of fruit juice that scream, refresh. Yeah, they might not be spilling the whole juicy truth. A dig into the American Journal of Public Health uncovers a bit of a mismatch. Those lush fruit images on the labels, they might not really reflect what's sloshing around inside. Thanks to the Food and Drug Administration's loosey-goosey rules, companies get a pass to splash whatever fruit-flavored fantasy they want on the bottle, even if it's not what's in the juice. And when you crack into what's actually in there, often a splash of real juice lost in a sea of water, you realize it's not just the fruits that are missing. Opting for juice over whole fruits, you're ditching fiber and guzzling sugar levels that rival soda. Sure, there are some vitamins in there, but let's face it, those bright labels might pull you in, only to hide the not-so-sweet reality. 25. Brined beef. You think you know why we all eat meat, right? Because it's all neatly packaged and far from its original moo or cluck state. But hold up, have you ever really checked out those labels on your meat? Spot words like enhanced or brined, or maybe that sneaky natural flavor tag? Yeah, that's your cue to maybe put that package back on the shelf. A 100-gram beef piece can pack up to 1,800 milligrams of sodium. Daily salt limit, only up to 2,300 milligrams. So yeah, do the math and maybe rethink that juicy steak. Have you ever discovered the shocking truth about what's really in your food? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more eye-opening content in the future.